In a hospital where mothers died by the hundreds, one doctor discovered a simple way to save them. The medical world refused to believe him. Welcome to the Vienna General Hospital in the 1840s. A terrifying condition known as childbed fever is tearing through the maternity wards, killing new mothers in staggering numbers. The death toll grew so high that pregnant women calculated the odds. Many delayed arriving on purpose, realizing it was statistically safer to give birth in the dirty streets of the city than to cross the threshold of the hospital's clinics. Ignaz Semmelweis, a young Hungarian physician, refused to accept the prevailing explanations. While his peers blamed miasma, a supposed toxic vapor of bad air, Semmelweis looked for empirical evidence to explain the deaths. For Semmelweis, finding the cause was a desperate race to stop a mass slaughter occurring within an institution built to heal. The hospital operated 2 free maternity clinics side by side, functioning as a massive, accidental, controlled trial. Medical students and doctors ran the first clinic, while female midwives ran the second. Admission alternated by the day of the week, placing pregnant women into one of the 2 wards essentially at random. This chart highlights a lethal anomaly. The doctor's clinic averaged a 10.65% mortality rate. The midwives' clinic lost just 2%. Women assigned to the first clinic knew these numbers, begging staff to send them to the midwives instead. Semmelweis systematically isolated variables. He ruled out the weather, or the season, and childbirth itself, given that women who delivered in the streets survived at much higher rates than those in the first clinic. The statistics demonstrated that the act of being examined by the hospital's own doctors was the primary vector of death. Every morning, doctors and medical students performed autopsies on the very women childbed fever had killed the day before, then walked directly to the maternity ward to perform internal examinations. Midwives, by contrast, performed no autopsies at all. The catalyst for discovery came in 1847. Semmelweis's friend, a forensic pathologist named Jakob Kolechka, accidentally pricked his finger with a student's scalpel during an autopsy. Within days, he died of a massive infection. Semmelweis reviewed Kolechka's autopsy findings. The internal pathology matched the women dying of childbed fever exactly. He realized the horrifying mechanism of transmission. Doctors were carrying invisible cadaverous particles directly from the corpses in the morgue straight into the open wounds of laboring mothers. He immediately ordered a strict chemical intervention. Before touching any patient, every doctor had to scrub their hands in a chlorinated lime solution until the smell of the morgue was completely gone. Germs were entirely unknown to science at the time. By using smell as his indicator for a chemical barrier, Semmelweis bypassed decades of medical dogma to directly attack the pathogen. This graph charts the timeline of maternal deaths in Vienna. After introducing the chlorine hand-washing protocol, average monthly mortality in the doctor's clinic collapsed from 10.65% to 1.98%. The data held steady. For every 11 women examined under the new protocol, 1 fewer mother died. Instead of welcoming the data, the medical establishment turned on him. Senior doctors, led by his own chief Johann Klein, outright rejected the findings, arguing the drop in deaths was actually due to the hospital's new ventilation system. Admitting Semmelweis was right required accepting a brutal implication. It meant that these distinguished, wealthy gentlemen of science, the healers themselves, had unknowingly operated as mass murderers. Protecting their pride took priority over the data. Semmelweis's contract was not renewed, and he was effectively forced out of his position in Vienna. This reaction became known as the Semmelweis reflex, the fatal human flaw where institutional dogma, pride, and the status quo override undeniable life-saving evidence. Semmelweis retreated to his native Hungary, taking an unpaid position at Pest's Rokas Hospital. He implemented his protocol and drastically cut mortality there as well. Yet the global medical community continued to ignore his findings. By 1861, he reached a breaking point. When his major book detailing his research was met with mockery, he alienated his peers by writing unhinged open letters, publicly calling prominent obstetricians ignorant murderers. His mental state collapsed completely. In 1865, peers tricked him and had him committed to a psychiatric asylum in Austria against his will. He was severely beaten by asylum guards. 2 weeks later, he succumbed to sepsis, the exact same blood infection he had spent his entire life trying to eradicate. Semmelweis was ultimately silenced by the overwhelming, willful ignorance of his peers, an outlier whose evidence-based truth arrived decades before the world was willing to accept it. Just a few years after his death, Louis Pasteur established the germ theory of disease, proving that Semmelweis's cadaverous particles were actually bacteria. Soon after, Joseph Lister pioneered antiseptic surgery, officially validating the chemical cleaning protocols Semmelweis had invented decades earlier. Decades later, Semmelweis's strict hand hygiene protocols eventually became the absolute non-negotiable foundation of modern healthcare and hospitals worldwide. The Semmelweis reflex endures as a cautionary tale about the human tendency to reject uncomfortable truths. Today, the act of washing your hands seems obvious. In Semmelweis's time, proving it could save lives cost him almost everything.